How's it going, everybody? Gaurav Bhatt here. You're listening to the Express Sports Podcast, and it's game time. Bangaon, nondescript village in Haryana, is quickly becoming the cradle for javelin throwers in India. It has even earned the moniker Finland of Haryana, which was also the headline for a wonderful feature written a couple of weeks ago by Indian Express's Olympic sports correspondent Andrew Amsan. To talk more about the place, the culture there, and the future of the sport in our country, we have the great Andrew Amsan with us, making his long-awaited debut on Express Sports Podcast. Andrew, pehle to welcome.
Hi. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I must tell everyone that I haven't paid him, so this was all out of true admiration.
Yeah, and I have all the receipts, so I can counter that very easily. But Andrew, the one thing perhaps some of our listeners from, the headline itself of the feature that I'm talking about and even of the podcast, I'm sure, is something that they would like to know is why Finland? What is the reason behind this tag? Why are we calling this village, a Finland of Haryana?
Okay, so everyone knows Finland is traditional powerhouse of javelin, and lot of big names have come from there. So Germany, Finland, it's like when you say javelin, you sort of think about these countries. So in this case, this actually started off as a joke, like in the sports circle, in the athletic circle. अरे ये तो हरियाणा के फिनलैंड से आ गए ये लोग. Because Coach Hanuman, who trains these kids, has been there for a long while. He was a professional athlete himself. So he's been coaching since 2010. And what he does is like he gets his SUV and he loads, this is a very wrong word to say, probably. He gets his students, 5, 6, 7 of them, and they come here and bag medals and leave. It's almost like a moving band or something. They come here, perform, they leave. So people know them. Like when they come, they're like, this just started off as a joke, aage Haryana ke Finland se, and stuck there. And now I think thanks to our story and headline, more people probably call it as the Finland of Haryana. In fact, after the story, the ambassador of Finland tweeted that she would like to go visit this place as well. So that's how probably the name came up.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. एक चीज I would like to know is what tipped you off, what prompted you to go there and cover this story, cover all the characters that we'll be hearing about later in the podcast. What was the latest breakthrough, if I may?
So this was at the Javelin Nationals recently. So at the under 16 women's results, the first, second, and third prize was taken by Hanuman's trainees. And Deepika, who took the first prize, also broke the under 16 national record. So it was a straightforward story. I mean, one coach, 3 medals in the same category, a little sweep, if you call. So I just went and spoke there. So I thought they would be probably coming from a proper academy somewhere in Rohtak. There's a stadium where they train. And I went there and I asked Coach Hanuman the general question, where do you train? He said, we train at an abandoned chicken farm. I was like, this is new. And I was so curious. I really wanted to go there and visit. And turns out it is actually a abandoned chicken farm, which now being used as a cow shed. I mean, the only structure there you will see is a cow shed where they keep their equipment, and their Hanuma also trains a high jumper. So he also has his high jump bit stored there. So in fact, when they go there, even before training begins, they have to chase away, untie the buffaloes there, and like they chase them into the fields. And that's how the training even resumes. So it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
And where exactly is this village? अगर हमारे कोई listener वहाँ पहुँचना चाहे तो how do you reach it? We've been saying Haryana, but where in Haryana?
They would love to have visitors. They are very welcoming people. In fact, Coach Anuma keeps telling me, when are you coming back? Our students want to meet you. They would love to know what others think about. It was so beautiful that they all saw the newspaper clipping and sent me messages like, thank you, thank you. So it is in this district called Fatehabad, which is probably another 1 hour from Rohtak. It is going to take you less than 6 hours because the last stretch is like through fields and Kacha road. And if you're like going there at night or leaving from there after sun goes down, there'll be no light, till you reach the town. So it is really far away. And I think the best way is to probably drive down and make sure there are more people in the car who can drive, because you might need to take turns because it's exhausting.
एक तो यार, I would like to say you'd fit right in at this podcast because I ask you for the address and you go into this, you launch into this how people started thanking you for your coverage and newspaper clippings दिखा के सीधा आंसर तो देना ही नहीं होता है या किसी को. But yeah, that is wonderful to hear, Andrew. And tell us a little about Hanuman Singh, the coach, because you've been saying he has been an active athlete and he has been doing this for some time, right? So what is his background like, and what are some of his credentials?
Technically, Coach Hanuma is still an active athlete because the last civil services tournament he won a bronze. So his story is very, very interesting. So he started off very, very late. In fact, there wasn't sports in his life. The only thing he liked to do when he was young was to swim in the canals. There are many canals over there. Like, he used to just swim, and like he was very fit and he had his natural build. Like, he almost looks like Sushil Singh from far off. So he went into Polytechnic College, and then there he got into some bad habits, alcohol, and also he sort of joined these local goons and, small time extortion. And like, he's always asked me to not talk about this much because he's still Haryana government employee. So yeah, so the past being past. When he returned after college, he just went to a local ground in the neighboring village and he saw this person. His name is Lincoln. We have no clue where Lincoln is, and he hasn't met Lincoln ever since. So Lincoln was throwing the javelin and he asked, "Kya hota hai?" And he just gave him the javelin. And like, initially his job was to just retrieve the javelin. So he was so fascinated. And the moment he started throwing, he knew that this was his love. I mean, he found it a bit too late. And then he did well. Unfortunately, no national medals so far, but his wards, safe to say, at least 30 national medals at various age groups. So the sport javelin has transformed his life. To quote him, he said, "If I wasn't introduced to javelin, I would have been in jail."
And what is the process to get into his academy, yaar? Because I'm sure it's not like कि गांव के सारे बच्चों को एक साथ like a Pied Piper, he brings them to the training ground and he enrolls them into the academy. So is there a procedure, is there a system in place for potential javelin thrower to get into Hanuman Singh's academy, to get under his tutelage?
So first of all, Gaurav, we are calling it an academy, but there isn't any physical structure. There isn't a board. Probably we could even give him a suggestion, like we could come up with a name for the academy if it comes up later. It's just a rundown cowshed right now. So how do you get into his academy? Is Aruma is also a physical education teacher at a government college. So if he sees potential in any students over there, he asks them to come here and join. But his batch is very limited. He will not go beyond, let's say, 12 or 15, because he says he needs to give time, and it's a very, very specialized sport. It needs a lot of attention. So this Hanuman decides, and if someone comes, he will give them the toughest 2 weeks of their life training. That's sort of a weeding process, and most of them like literally leave on their own. So the interesting part is Deepika, who won the gold in the under 16 nationals and is also the under 16 national record holder, got into the academy because she just lives adjacent to the training ground. She used to just come in the evening, sit outside house and watch these kids train. So Coach Hanuman called him like, "Come here. Do you want to try this?" So it happened all by chance. I think to get into Hanuman's academy, to be either lucky or, I don't know. There's no process. There's no application so far.
And also, yeah, going through your story, I noticed one thing that, the exploits of Jyoti and the other medalists, this sort of upheaval, this revolution in Bengal, it has been going on since even before Neeraj Chopra's illustrious Olympic gold, right? Because I'm sure that his performances have boosted the spirits and everything in the village. But this has been a work in progress for some time, right? So take us through that. What has been the background and what, Hanuman calls the turning point for this village?
So Coach Hanuman has been training since 2010, and he says he had to wait for 7 years, 2017. 2017 is when Poonam Rani, one of his better students, won silver at the Federation Cup, at the Nationals, at the Interstate Meet. This medal surge, that's when people started believing in him. They started sending their daughters and people came inquiring because they could see results. So initially, obviously, everyone was skeptical. So he began in 2010 and now results are coming. And in fact, to quote him, says, "We are getting noticed now."
Yeah, and tell us a little about life in Bangaon, yeah, because तुम्हारा मैं कुछ खींचा हुआ फोटोज देख रहा था एंड देयर आर पीपल ट्रेनिंग एंड नॉर्मल विलेज लाइफ इज गोइंग ऑन साइमल्टेनियसली बाय द साइड बफेलोज को दे आर चेजिंग अवे फ्रॉम द ट्रेनिंग ग्राउंड्स व्हाट वाज योर एक्सपीरियंस लाइक एंड व्हाट कुड यू मेक आउट seeing how you followed Neeraj Chopra since he was just up and coming contender in javelin और बड़े बड़े स्टेट मीट्स तुमने अटेंड किए हैं नेशनल मीट्स अटेंड किए हैं व्हाट वाज डिफरेंट अबाउट द ट्रेनिंग दैट वाज टेकिंग प्लेस एंड क्या था वहां पे माहौल
Bangaon is like any other Haryana village, almost obscure. I've traveled across Haryana. It seems nothing distinct as such. People are nice. If you talk about living lifestyle, it's very simple. Most of them are farmers. Nothing fancy. I think probably if you can compare their lives to city lives, they are very, very strict. Almost none of the students even own a smartphone, like allowed to use a phone. Practice, go home, study. So I'm not endorsing such an idea, but for them it's been working. And Coach Hanuman's also very, very strict, to be honest. I'd say discipline, hard work, and lots of desi ghee. Trust me, that's the secret.
I also read he's very disciplined about the length of his students' hair. Is that correct?
Oh yes. He himself sports an army cut, and it's almost like it's very easy to figure out who Hanuman students are. If they probably come to a meet, you'll probably know, oh, another thing right now he's training just women students mostly. So if you see 3 girls with a similar haircut, you can be pretty sure they're from Haryana's Finland. So what he does, like whenever someone joins in, he waits. He doesn't tell them on day one, you have to get a haircut. So he waits till they actually sort of develop some interest in the sport. And then comes this condition. You have to let go of some of your hair. And this rule stays till they turn 18 and then they can decide.
Yeah.
Then it's fine.
Andrew, yaar, एक interesting cheez which I felt reading your story is, and I'm sure you would agree in sports journalism, there's this trap which is very easy to fall into यार कि अरे villages में से देखो athletes निकल के आ रहे हैं from these ऐसा circumstances में and everything and certain writers sort of milk it and the athletes themselves, they have an idea what to speak and what to say. But reading your story and, from what you have said about these characters and coaches, of course, the facilities are not there. And you just mentioned city life, village life, or kaisa this abandoned chicken farm turned into cow shed as the training ground. But there doesn't seem to be that sort of excuse making it didn't come across in your story that they're very hapless and they're very dependent on the support of everybody. ऐसा कुछ feeling मुझे तो नहीं आया खैर पढ़ के. What was your takeaway? What was your outlook on how Hanuman Singh trains and how his students behave? Because they seem to be a happy bunch. Of course, limitations रहेंगी, but what was your take on this?
Gaurav, you pretty much covered what I would have liked to say or answer. I mean, it is true. It is absolutely true. There are limitations, but Coach Hanuman tells me that if you are going to look at these problems, then there is no way we can actually train. So they are putting it at the back seat right now and hoping things change. It's not that they absolutely love training in this uneven ground where there's no facility, no gym, there is no light, so you have to finish by 3-4 because you can't train later in the evening. Obviously, they do want to go train at a proper stadium, but a proper synthetic stadium in their district is about 65 kilometers away, practically inaccessible. So there is a bridge. They are not complaining about it. But since these are very young athletes, eventually they would need better facilities. It would be absolutely unfair to, let them compete. One kid says, मैं तो सिर्फ कंपटीशन में जाती हूँ तभी सिंथेटिक में जाता हूँ तो वहाँ अपने आप ही 2 मीटर ऐड हो जाता है दैट इज गुड आई मीन दीज थिंग्स डू अफेक्ट बट आई थिंक दे आर नॉट थिंकिंग अबाउट इट एट द मोमेंट एंड it would be a little unfair to romanticize the whole thing completely and say this is the village thing, stars are coming out as you said. No, eventually they should have the same training facility if not better.
And talking about that eventuality, Andrew, and which brings me to my final question. A lot of our listeners would be wondering कि यार अगर ऐसा hamlets निकल रहे हैं, ऐसा if they are nurseries of the sport, they are cradles of the sport in such rural places of India, तो काफी bright लगने वाला है future of the sport. I remember you made an appearance on the Three Things podcast on the Indian Express where you talked about your experiences of covering national meets, state meets, javelin ka, where there's this huge growth in interest where people are picking up the javelin, they are taking up the sport. But I think you chose to be cautiously optimistic about the entire thing because this illustrious Olympic gold and the newcomers who are taking up the sport, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll translate into greater glories for India, right? So what is the roadmap like and what is your outlook on javelin throwing future in India?
To answer this, we must talk about the big man himself, Neeraj Chopra. I remember an interaction with his late coach, Gary Calvert, under whom he made that under 20 world record and that first gold, which brought him to limelight. So he told me, Gary Calvert told me that he has been observing Indian javelin throwers for 30 to 40 years. Just imagine that man has seen almost probably every javelin thrower that has come in that phase. And he says, Neeraj Chopra is different. This was way before he won the Olympic medal. I think 2018 he passed away, if I'm correct. He said he's a one of talent. So to find another Neeraj Chopra is, I don't even know, this took more than 100 years. Again, the difference right now after Chopra's medal is a lot of youngsters know about javelin. I think that's a good start. I mean, javelin kya hota hai wala question at least won't pop up right now. And I see there were kids who were doing gymnastics, or kids who were doing running, like they're giving javelin a shot. And immediate results cannot be expected. I mean, it takes a long while. So in the recent nationals, participation was low. I mean, there is interest, but it will take time. Probably another 10 years to just even see participation grow. So it's like having a good bench strength. Like, so if we compare it with cricket, if you have, like, cricket is probably so good in India because there's like every street there is one person who wants to become a cricketer, one kid who's going to an academy and training. Likewise, if we have more participation, eventually we might end up finding, we don't even have to compare it and say another Neeraj Chopra, but another solid athlete.
Yeah. At this moment, I would like to bring in producer Shashank. Shashank, one thing that I wanted to ask you or even, let's say, discuss with you is this Lincoln fellow that Andrew has written about in the story and just mentioned in the podcast. He comes across as this imaginary friend, imaginary character Andrew, where uska naam bhi hame nahi pata, uska whereabouts nahi pata. We just have this anecdote where Hanuman Singh says ki Arey, Lincoln mila tha, wo javelin feck raha tha, and then he taught me that. Shashank, doesn't he come across as this mythical sort of character that, most sporting biopics and even otherwise have?
या डेफिनेटली मतलब बॉडी ने अपने आप वो जागरूक किया एक लिंकन कैरेक्टर, ब्रेन में केमिकल इम्बैलेंस हुआ, मगर उससे मेरा करियर और मेरी लाइफ चेंज हो गई.
Chemical locha from Munna Bhai, it seems.
Yeah, and like I was thinking, if we were to propose names for the academy, like the Lincoln Academy is like the
yeah. That's a perfect fit, actually.
Yeah, like a Lincoln Academy is like a good name. Yeah. And apart from Lincoln Academy, I was thinking the FIH Academy, which seems like the obvious name. The Finland in Haryana Academy. That's another good name that I thought that we could propose to him.
The only problem with that is FIH is the acronym for the International Hockey Federation. So, और भी ज़्यादा confusing हो जाएगा because people will think यार यहाँ तो javelin भी बंद हो गया, अभी hockey academy चल रहा है. But I think let's stick with Lincoln. I'm training at the Lincoln Academy in Finland, has a nice ring to it. But,
definitely. Yeah. By the way, Andrew, I remember that javelins, they're not that cheap, right? Mm-hmm. So getting all these kids to train and just owning these javelins, the spears, like how is he managing to get funds for it? Just running this entire operation.
I asked them the very same question. He probably has around 10, 15 javelins lying in the store. So ask them, how do you get these? How do you fund these? He's very simple and straightforward. He says, if an athlete wins a junior medal, the Haryana government has a very simple scheme where you win a medal, you apply for it, you give your documents, and they'll give you a certain amount as prize money. So this prize money goes to the family, and they get one javelin and then shared. This is one model that is working for them. The other model is, to be honest, Jugaad. He says he knows people, he has friends. When he asks, they give it to him. Like, do javelin chahiye, he gets it.
That's pretty cool. He seems like a very, very resourceful guy.
Hopefully he's not using the same tactics he did when he was in college.
Yeah, the one जिसने मतलब javelin ने उसको उस life से बचा लिया. Which is a story that we hear often, right, Gaurav?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that applies to a lot of our athletes in Haryana. A lot of our boxers, उनका तो start ही ऐसा होता है. They don't own a glove till they perform well at a state meet or a national meet. Borrow करके ही चलाते हैं. But times change. Andrew, before I let you go, I've managed to catch you on this podcast. I wanted to ask you for a couple of words of inspiration. Lockdown में काफी लोगों ने बहुत ज़्यादा weight gain कर दिया है, and they are trying to shed those kilos. And unfortunately, we don't have a Weight Watcher friend like you do. And you know where this is going. The big man himself, Neeraj Chopra, he has taken a keen interest in कितना तुम्हारा मोटापा बढ़ गया है, कितना घट गया है. So quickly take our listeners through these interactions which keep popping up on your timeline where you are telling him about the latest update in your physical.
I have no clue why he genuinely like a trainer after me. Trust me. Every conversation we have, the last conversation we had was for his sister's wedding last month. He invited me and I had already some other plans and some commitments. So I apologized and I said, okay. Then he sent me a voice text. Fine, but आप अपना सेहत का ख्याल रखिए. बीच में बहुत मोटे हो गए. Like, he is after me. Trust me. Like, and if I don't lose weight after motivation from the big guy, I don't think anything can help me. So yeah, I think it's just one of the perks of knowing him since before he actually became an Olympic champion. So we have that friendly bond we share. So yeah, I think what Neeraj says applies to probably a lot of listeners. आप लोगों को सेहत का ख्याल रखना चाहिए.
This is an incredible flex when Andrew will become like, his body will become like absolutely in shape. People are like, how did you do it? Who's your trainer? Like, Neeraj Chopra.
I was just about to say यार कि ये luxury है नहीं ना Andrew हमारे पास. We don't have a Olympic champion friend to spur us on. But yeah, that's a wonderful story. Do follow Andrew on @Andrew Amsan on Twitter to watch these videos of these lovely interactions with Neeraj Chopra. Mihir Vasavra is busy with the Junior Hockey World Cup in Odisha. In the coming weeks, he'll hopefully take us through that sojourn. I won't be here for a couple of weeks too. I'll be on a well-earned break. So you make sure to stay tuned to all the shows Express Podcast puts out. But more importantly, stay safe. Adios.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.